So, my last few videos have been about the mother wound. And the reason why I've been talking about the mother wound a lot is because, number one, I have an offering out called Sovereign Daughter, where I help women liberate themselves from the pain of the mother wound and step into their sovereignty, step into their own authority, removing themselves from or releasing themselves from the conditioning that comes from having an abusive, emotionally immature, cold, distant, neglectful mother, whatever combination of that you have experienced. And I'm not going to dive too deep into what the mother wound is because I cover that in my last videos, but I've been talking about this because not just because of the offer, but also because it's something that's very relevant to me and my own experience and what it is that I've gone through with and continue to sometimes go through with my own mother and the deep work that I've done around this. And in this video, I want to offer you 5 ways that you can heal from the mother wound, like 5 things that you can do to shift out of the deep pain and tenderness and loss that you might be feeling around your relationship with your mother, because there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of rage. And for something that's so deep, so biologically encoded, it feels like it's impossible to come to a place of healing. A lot of you have gone no contact or low contact with your mothers, which is great, and it's something that I advocate for if necessary. If you're dealing with someone who is really abusive or narcissistic, who's completely unwilling to treat you with respect and to offer any willingness to change or shift or evolve or grow, I do think that those things can be very valuable. But at the same time, going no contact is only one piece of it. It doesn't address like the underlying emotions and spiritual components that I think are really important to healing the mother wound. And so I'm going to walk you through the five the 5 pieces of wisdom that I like to offer when it comes to healing the mother wound. And none of these don't have to be done in any particular order. Sometimes you might just be focusing on one because that's all you have the capacity for, or you might be dipping and dabbing into multiple simultaneously or all of them at once. As you continue to go on your own journey, it will become more and more clear to you. And I also want to note that some of the steps that I have outlined that I'm going to share with you today can feel triggering and can feel counterintuitive. And that's a part of the healing process. That's part of the growth, because there's a lot of challenging feelings that rise up when we're talking about our mother. We're talking about the woman who birthed us, the woman who put us here on the planet. And so if you're feeling triggered by anything that I say, just breathe into and sit with that trigger, because there's medicine in what it is that I have to say. So the very first step that, again, in no particular order, but the first step that I tell women and men as well when it comes to healing their mother wound is to have gratitude for your mother. I know. What do you mean? I know. And the reason why I say have gratitude is because gratitude is a heart opener. Gratitude is a heart opener, and what a lot of women forget is that we are highly receptive, intuitive, conscious beings. We have the ability to create and receive in ways beyond our wildest comprehension, beyond our wildest imagination. And gratitude is an anchor that keeps your heart open and receptive. And when you are able to have gratitude for your mother, and I'm not saying have gratitude for the things that she did to you, I'm saying have gratitude for the fact that you exist. Have gratitude for the fact that she put you here, that she used her body as a vessel to give you life. And if you're someone who's of the mindset, well, I didn't ask to be here and I hate it here and all of that, there's other videos that we can go into, or you need some one-on-one work, because if you don't love your life, if you don't love that you're here, if you don't love that you exist, then none of the things that I say are going to matter in the first place. But for those of you who do love your life, or you want to love your life, you want to love that you're here, but you've had such tremendous trauma around your childhood and your upbringing, then leaning into having gratitude for the fact that you exist is a really, really powerful tool. When I was first told this, I remember how much it pissed me off. It really, really made me upset, because what do you mean you want me to have gratitude for the woman that beat me and who cursed me out and called me names and financially abused me and all of these things that my mother did to me? What do you mean have gratitude for her? And I had a former spiritual teacher who would refer to our mother and our father as the mothership and the fathership. And this also ties in with the core of what I teach, which is radical responsibility. I teach I teach my clients that if you are a goddess, you cannot be a victim. Those two identities are incompatible, they are mutually exclusive. And what my teacher would say is that your mothership and your fathership only had one job, and their job was to put you on the planet. Everything else after that is a bonus. And it was really hard for me to hear that because I know so many people who have really great relationships with their mothers and with their fathers, and or you see it depicted in TV shows and movies, and there's like always like a little like bit of like envy that might come up when you see that. Like, what do you mean I got the mother who, did all of these horrible things to me, but everybody else gets mothers who are loving and supportive and caring and nurturing and all of these things that I wish that I had. And for me, it's been what's been really powerful, really healing, and really transformative for me is just understanding my path and understanding my trajectory, understanding, my own contract with this body and with this vessel, and my contract with all of the other souls that I have connected with over the years. And I'm grateful for every single person that I've ever had contact with, good or bad, regardless of what it is that they did to me or how they treated me, because there's so much wisdom in the teachings of those people, whether it was learning to set boundaries or learning to stand up for myself or learning discernment or learning, pick something that you learn from really, really difficult relationships. There is no greater teacher in your life than your mother, whether she was great to you or whether she was awful to you. And so her bringing me into existence and teaching me what it is that she has taught me has allowed me to become the woman that I am, who's able to speak about these things and speak with authority and speak with conviction and put out all of these beautiful offerings into the world to help other women change and transform their lives. And so that's why I say the first piece is gratitude, not just because of your mother putting you on the planet and all of these other things, but simply because gratitude keeps your heart open. It keeps you receptive. When you have closed your heart to one person, you've closed your heart to everybody. There's no, oh, only going to close my heart for you, but I'm going to keep my heart open for you. That's where boundaries come in. I talk about boundaries. That's one of the other steps. Because when you have firm boundaries, you're able to keep your heart open regardless of who you're interacting with, because you have a guard at the gate of your temple. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So this will, in the sense of keeping your heart open, it'll make a little bit more sense when I talk about boundaries. But the second piece, or the second step, is honoring and accepting your mother's humanity. And this is another one that's really challenging because we don't often see our mothers as people. We don't see our mothers as women. We see our mothers as our mother and the role that she's supposed to play in our minds, the responsibility she's supposed to have in our minds, and the impact that we want her to have on us as our mother. But we forget that she is a woman. She's a human being. Before you were ever a thought, she was a person with her own hopes, her own dreams, her own experiences, her own childhood upbringing, her own insecurities and wounds and anything else that comes with this human experience. When we're children, especially when we're very, very, very small children, we see our mother as God. We deify our mother. Like, babies don't even understand separation. It takes months and months before a baby even realizes that they're separate from their mother. And so, like, that connection, that biological hardwiring, that spiritual hardwiring, or soft wiring, I guess, software, is so deep and so ingrained. And it takes a really long time for us to get to a point where we actually have genuine autonomy. And you will not have true autonomy as a woman, as a daughter, until you recognize the autonomy of your mother. You recognize the humanity of your mother. And by recognizing that she is a woman who, especially like if you're my age, or a little bit older, and honestly, it doesn't matter if you're however old, how much older than you are than me, especially if you're older, much older. What our mothers experience, the realm, the world that our mothers existed in is very, very different from the world that we exist in. I mean, our mothers were born in an era where they couldn't even have bank accounts without a man. A lot of our grandmothers couldn't work unless it was like domestic labor. The Violence Against Women Act didn't even get signed into law until 1994. I was born in 1987, so I was 6 or 7 years old. For the first 6 or 7 years of my life, it was still legally permissible to beat your wife. And so when we think about, because we talk so much about feminism, we talk about women's history, we talk about these eras and the things that women went through during these eras, but we forget that our mothers and grandmothers were alive during these eras and have firsthand experience with these social, what's the word I'm looking for? Structures, these social structures. And so we forget that about them, and we forget that, the things that they went through. And it's not to absolve, it's not to excuse, it's to understand. It's to understand, and it's to foster compassion and empathy for what it is that they've gone through and who they are as individuals outside of us. Because when I think about what my mother went through, who she was raised by, what she survived, I understand why my mother is the way that she is. Does it mean she's allowed to treat me the way that she has treated me, or does it absolve her of the things that she did? Absolutely not. But it helps me understand, and it's deeply healing to remove her from the pedestal that I had her on as you are my mother and you're supposed to do da 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 da, and just recognizing her as a woman, just a woman, as a human being, and removing that power that she had over my life. Because when you pedestalize your parents, you are giving them the power to let you down. You're giving them the power to disappoint you and to disappoint your expectations that you have of them. So honoring their humanity is an important part of the healing process. The next piece is grieving the childhood you wish you had, or grieving the mother that you wish you had. And this is something that gets glossed over a lot in these conversations around our parents and parent wounds, is the grief of, who would I have been had I had a different mother? What could I have achieved if my mother had treated me better, or taught me financial literacy, or didn't beat me, or didn't let, strange men come around me or to do things to me? Like, who could I have been had my life not turned out the way that it did? Or what would my life have turned out like had I not been in those circumstances? And the grief that comes with that, the grief of seeing Gilmore Girls. Like, I always just bring up Gilmore Girls because it's such a famous show where it has like this super tight mother-daughter dynamic. And a lot of people, love this mother-daughter dynamic. Like, why couldn't I have been, Lorelai, and I think her name was Rory. I actually didn't watch Gilmore Girls, but I know that it's, a good example. I think it's Rory. I've seen a few episodes. Anyway, I digress. Who would I have been if my mother had been like Lorelai? Who would I have been if my mother was like, the mother in Bridgerton? Or just pick a depiction, or even like your best friend who has the greatest mom in the world. Like, who could I have been had my mother been like that? There's a lot of grief that needs to be felt and needs to be processed in order for you to be able to move forward and move on and accept your current reality. And without you grieving and giving yourself to really feel the pain and to feel the agony and feel the loss of your childhood, the loss of that relationship that you wish you had with your mother, the loss of the memories that you wanted to create and co-create with your mother, giving yourself the space to feel all of those things and really grieve it is so important. And this goes for anything in your life. When you have any type of loss, whether it's a death, losing a job, a friendship ending, even moving into a new house, or sometimes just cutting your hair off, like, there's grief that needs to be felt and experienced in order for you to be able to move through the transmutation and transformation process. There is no transformation without death, without loss. And by honoring that death, by honoring that loss, you are liberating yourself into a space of greater peace. The next piece is boundaries, setting boundaries and enforcing boundaries. And it kind of ties into what I was saying before about having that open heart, keeping your heart open. The boundaries that you set and your enforcement of those boundaries is what will allow you to keep your heart open so that you can remain receptive to the blessings and abundance of this world without shutting yourself off from that because you're holding so much anger and resentment towards your mother, or because you don't have any boundaries and she's constantly crossing your boundaries and upsetting you. And so having those boundaries is important, not just for keeping your heart open, but for maintaining a sense of peace, for being able to live an autonomous life, to live a sovereign life. A lot of you have mothers who do not support your dreams, that do not support your goals or your vision for your life. And you need to set boundaries around the way that you communicate, the way that you, what it is that you share about your life and your choices that you're making. You know, for some of you, a boundary is you're not talking about certain topics. For some of you, you have boundaries around your own children. Maybe your mother doesn't respect the way that you're choosing to feed your kids, or the type of content that they're consuming. Your mother doesn't respect that and lets them just watch whatever they want or go to bed whenever they want, or whatever it is that she's doing out of lack of respect for you, or because she's trying to maintain some like power play with you, whatever it is, you're setting that boundary. So maybe the boundaries are, you know, she's not allowed to see your kids, or she's not allowed to feed your kids, or whatever the case is. It's having the boundary, knowing what the boundary is, but also enforcing the boundary. What is the consequence for you violating this boundary? One of the boundaries that I started setting with my mom is that I'm not going to be yelled at. Not going to be yelled at. I grew up getting yelled at, and like constantly getting yelled at, and yelling is abuse. Like it is abuse. And I'm saying this as someone who took on the trait of a yeller. And in my past two relationships, when I would get really, really upset, I would raise my voice. And I had to do a lot of work to get to the point where I could be upset and I can be angry without raising my voice and creating more verbal violence in the environment. So for me, getting yelled at is disrespectful, and yelling is disrespectful. Like I'm acknowledging where I took on those characteristics, where I partially became my mother. But for me, yelling is a boundary. And so when I first started doing this work, and I would be in a conversation with my mom and she would start raising her voice at me, I would let her know, do not raise your voice at me. I'm going to hang up. And I would just start hanging up the phone on her. I would hang up the phone on her, or if we were in person, I would walk away and I would let her know I'm not going to be yelled at. I'm not going to be yelled at. And over time, what started happening was she would start raising her voice, and then she would catch herself. And she would say, whoa, 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 let me just calm down. Let me just calm down. And she would start catching herself because she started to learn that if you want to be on the phone with me, you're not going to yell at me, because if you yell at me, I'm going to hang up. And it's like that old common saying, you teach people how to treat you. That is what boundaries and enforcement of boundaries is all about, because your mother has decided that because she gave birth to you, that she gets to decide how she's going to treat you, whether or not it is disrespectful or not. But you, as an autonomous woman, decide how you are to be treated. And so if you don't want to be treated a certain way, you make that clear, and then you have a consequence for the violation of that boundary. And so when you have strong boundaries and when you have the courage to enforce those boundaries, you don't need to be afraid of any interaction with anybody. You don't need to be afraid of interacting with your mother, with your father, with friends, with coworkers, with anyone, because you trust yourself to be able to keep an open heart, because you are setting those standards for other people to adhere to. And if they don't adhere to them, you trust yourself to enforce those consequences. The fifth piece, the fifth step, is inner child work, healing your inner child and learning to reparent yourself. So who is your inner child? Your inner child is you. Your inner child is the childhood version of you that still lives within you, that is still very active in your life. And the way that you know that your inner child is active is because you are being triggered all the time. And the reason why you're being triggered is because when you are a child and you, in your formative years, the first 5 to 7 years of your life are the formative years. This is where your sense of identity is solidified. This is where your concept of the world and your understanding of the world is solidified. This is where your beliefs are solidified. And so when you are triggered, very often that trigger is coming from the childhood version of you. It's coming from the childhood version of you that is feeling the trigger of, I'm not good enough, or nobody loves me, or I have to overgive in order to receive love. And when you start connecting with this part of yourself and reparenting, what you're doing is you are taking over as the authority for your inner child, because your inner child is still looking for your mother's approval. They're still looking for your mother's validation and acceptance. They're still looking to be loved and treated well by your mother. And when you have a mother that has consistently shown that she doesn't have the capacity to do those things or to give those things to you, you're keeping yourself stuck in a cycle of constantly being triggered, constantly being let down. And your inner child is always in a state, your nervous system is always in a state of fight or flight, of not feeling safe. And so by reparenting yourself, you take over as the authority for your inner child to look to for safety, for love, for protection, which allows your inner child to then quiet themselves and be a child again, to be playful and to be whimsical and to be free, to be expressive in the way that children naturally are before they are subdued by abusive or neglectful or cold or controlling parents, specifically in the case of what I'm talking about, the mother. And so when you do that inner child work and you're healing this part of yourself, you and taking over the role as the parent, your child will then begin to trust you through enforcing those boundaries, setting high standards for yourself. Your child will then trust you to handle when your mom is being mean or vicious or volatile or cold or passive aggressive or whatever her childish behavior is. Your inner child will not feel triggered because they trust you to keep them safe in that circumstance and in that environment. And so to heal the mother wound without talking about the inner child would be completely nonsensical, because the inner child and the wounds that the inner child is carrying, that is essentially what's running your life. So whenever you're triggered or you feel like you're in the presence of your mother and you feel like a scared little girl, that is your inner child that has taken over your consciousness in that moment, because your inner child is the one who decided that mama was scary or mama isn't safe. But you, as an adult woman, understand that safety is something that you cultivate within. You don't need your mom to be a certain way in order to feel safe. You don't need your mom to show up in a certain way in order for you to feel safe. You cultivate that safety from within. So when your mom does start acting out of pocket, your inner child doesn't feel scared of her because she knows you have it handled. And so those are the 5 steps for healing your inner child. Um, these are the ones that I go, they're like the foundation. Obviously, there's so much more nuance and there's other things that you can be doing throughout your day-to-day life. But these are like the 5 big pillars that are essential to healing from the mother wound, from no longer having a mother who has power over you, who is controlling you, who is the voice in your head when you're making decisions and when you're second guessing yourself and not trusting yourself, and stepping into a space of being fully sovereign and autonomous and in your authority as a woman. The woman in authority is what I call her. And so if you recognize the value of these steps and you want to start implementing them into your life, and you want to receive guidance and implementing these things into your life, you want to go through the process of really understanding where these triggers are coming from and how to alchemize that grief, how to alchemize that rage, and how to step into the full embodiment of being a woman of authority outside of your mother's influence, then my Sovereign Daughter offering is the space for you. We begin next week on March 27th. It is a full weekend event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, March 27th, March 28th, March 29th, where I'm going to take you through all this entire process, the stage of awakening and awareness, the stage of transmutation through grief and rage, and then the final stage of embodiment, which is where you step out on the other side, no longer feeling like your mother is a controlling force in your life. You are the sovereign authority in your life. And so that begins next week. I will drop the link for Sovereign Daughter in a pinned comment, and it will also be in the description box for you. And I would love to see you in this space, because the mother wound is it's the hidden force that shapes a woman's life in ways that is deeply, deeply unconscious. A lot of women don't even realize that they have a mother wound until they read what I wrote on the sales page for this offering. I had so many women reach out to me and say, I didn't even know I had a mother wound, but I read this and every single point hit. Every single point was me. Like, I felt it in my bones. It resonated with me so deeply. And so they're excited to do this work. And so Sovereign Daughter is a beautiful offering where you get to become the woman of your dreams. You're no longer beholden to the whims and the volatility of your mother, and you get to step into that sovereign authority for yourself. If you are seeing this video after March 27th, 28th, 29th, do not fret. This is an offering that is being recorded and immediately uploaded to a course portal. So when you sign up, you will automatically get access to the course portal with all of the recordings included. And yeah, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this video. And I really hope that these steps that I outlined for you give you more clarity and give you some tangible actions that you can begin taking in your own life to relieve and liberate yourself from feeling like the experience that you had as a child is still running your adult life. Because you are a sovereign being, you are a conscious creator, and it is your job, it's your responsibility to heal the parts of yourself that are still stuck in the spaces of powerlessness and lack and scarcity and fear, so you can become a sovereign woman who is free and liberated in her own life. Thank you so much for being here. Drop down in the comments. Let me know how this landed for you. Apologies for the truck going by. Let me know how this landed for you, how you're feeling after listening to this. And let me know if you're going to be joining us in Sovereign Daughter next week. I would love to see you. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, so that I can keep making this content for you, and that it lets the algorithm know that you want to see it, so it can push it out to more women, because I know that there are lots of women who need to hear this message today. Thank you so much. I will see you in my next video.